She walked in with a fresh haircut and a bag of groceries that I didn't recognize. The brand wasn't the usual stuff we buy. She always made a point about being loyal to that little overpriced organic store 2 blocks over. But this stuff came from a big box supermarket we never used. I was sitting on the couch pretending to scroll through the news, but I saw the receipt sticking out the side of the paper bag. I wouldn't have noticed anything weird if she hadn't rushed to put it away like she was hiding a Christmas gift in July. Long line? I asked without looking up, my voice flat, trying not to sound like I was testing her. She didn't answer right away, just said, "Yeah, something like that," and disappeared into the kitchen like she couldn't wait to get away from me. Something was off. It wasn't the groceries or the haircut or even the way she was dressed, flats, jeans, that tan cardigan she only wore when she wanted to look casual for someone who wasn't me. It was the smell. Not perfume, not body spray, but that lingering musk of a different cologne clinging to her neck. She had her hair tucked behind her ear in a way I'd never seen her do, and that told me more than anything else. That night after dinner, I noticed she kept twisting her ring around her finger. She always did that when she was thinking too hard or anxious, but lately, it had become constant, like a nervous tic she couldn't control. She sat across from me at the dinner table, pushing around the roasted vegetables on her plate, not really eating. "Work okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "MHM. Just the usual." Then she took a sip of water and cleared her throat like she was rehearsing something in her head. "I might have to go in this Saturday," she added. "Big pitch coming up." I knew for a fact her office didn't do weekend hours unless there was a company-wide event, and there hadn't been one mentioned for months. Still, I nodded, said nothing, and let her go through the rest of her story without challenging it. She didn't notice that I was recording every detail in my head, the way her eyes flicked to the clock 3 times, the way her fork tapped the plate in uneven rhythms, the way she avoided touching her wine like she didn't want to loosen her own tongue. 3 days later, I staged a little experiment. I told her I had a site visit across the state, an overnight job in Richmond, and wouldn't be back until Sunday afternoon. She didn't ask any follow-up questions. Just gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Okay, drive safe." That's when I knew. She didn't even pretend to care where I was going, which meant she had other plans already forming in her mind. I packed a bag, left the house at 6 in the morning, drove 2 blocks, parked behind the Baptist church on Elm Street, and waited. By noon, I was questioning my own sanity, but around 2, I saw it. A white Camry pulled into our driveway. I knew the car. It belonged to someone from her gym, a guy I'd seen maybe twice in passing, someone she claimed was just a friendly face she occasionally bumped into near the treadmills. His name was Ben. Of course it was Ben. I stayed crouched low in the back seat of my truck, watching like a damn private investigator, heart thudding like I was a teenager sneaking into a club. I didn't even need to see what happened next, but I kept watching anyway. They didn't leave right away. That was the part that surprised me. I expected a quick visit, a drop-off, maybe even just coffee. But they stayed. 20 minutes turned into 40, then into an hour. No movement. Curtains drawn. Her car still parked like nothing was going on. Around the 90-minute mark, I stepped out of the truck and walked. I didn't storm in. I didn't bang on the door. I just walked around the neighborhood, trying to understand how I had been so blind. My legs moved like they didn't belong to me. I ended up in the park 2 blocks away, sitting on a splintered bench, just staring at my hands. I stayed there until dusk, until the Camry pulled away without headlights, until I was sure she'd had time to clean up whatever mess she thought she could hide. Then I went home and pretended to be tired from the long drive. She greeted me like a dog that knew it had chewed up a shoe but hoped the owner wouldn't notice. Her hair was different, tied back in a low ponytail, and she was in my favorite old hoodie like that would make me forget what she did in it while I was in Richmond. I hugged her, whispered, "Missed you," and let her believe she got away with it. I already knew what I was going to do. I just needed more time. I didn't ask her anything that night. I didn't even look at her longer than necessary. I ate the reheated leftovers she served, complimented the seasoning like everything was fine, and went to bed early. The next morning, I woke up before her and opened the windows in the kitchen to let in the sharp, cold air, the kind that wakes you up whether you like it or not. While the coffee brewed, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at her car keys resting beside her purse. The same purse she always brought when she wasn't going to work, the one that had no reason to be used on a Saturday when she claimed to be home all day. That was the only reason I checked it. Not because I was desperate for confirmation, but because I already knew, and I needed a way to break past the fog of self-doubt I was starting to suffocate in. Inside, Neatly tucked away in the zippered pouch she never used was a folded parking receipt from the downtown cinema dated the day I was supposedly out of town. One adult ticket, one popcorn, one soda. I looked again to be sure. It wasn't from the mall theater 5 minutes from the house. It was from the boutique one we used to go to during our first year together. The one we stopped going to because she said the seats were too uncomfortable and the popcorn always tasted like it was days old. So now she was uncomfortable with me but fine bringing someone else to our old spots? That felt like the kind of disrespect you don't recover from. I put the receipt back exactly how I found it, zipped the purse shut, and went back to my chair without saying a word. She woke up an hour later and strolled into the kitchen like someone with nothing to hide. She was humming, something off a playlist I hadn't heard in months, the one she used to play when she was cleaning. "Sleep okay?" she asked, pouring herself coffee like this was just another Sunday. I nodded. "Did you end up getting that pitch sorted?" I asked, casual. She nodded, eyes still on her cup. "Yeah, it went okay. Just a lot of prep. Might be another one next weekend, too." I watched her carefully, noting how she avoided my eyes even while standing still. "You going to need the car all day?" I asked. "Was thinking of doing some stuff around the house, maybe grab lunch." She shook her head too fast. "Actually, I was going to run a few errands. Just quick stuff." She was lying again, and not even trying hard to hide it. That was the most insulting part. I wasn't worth the effort anymore. I waited until she left, and then started my own errands. First stop was the hardware store. I bought a small motion-activated camera, one that looked like a regular USB charger. Nothing fancy. I paid in cash. Next, I went to a second-hand electronics shop and picked up an old used phone with a cracked corner. I didn't need it for calls, just the camera feed app. I returned home and installed everything without rushing. The camera went in the wall socket across from the hallway leading to her bedroom. From that angle, I'd see everything coming in or out. I set the app, tested it, and tucked the phone into the back of my sock drawer. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something colder than that. I needed her to be the one to prove me right. 2 nights later, she came home later than usual. Claimed she had a team dinner. She smelled like citrus and something else, clean clothes with someone else's cologne brushed into the collar. I didn't mention it. She showered before bed, dried her hair longer than she ever had before, and slipped under the sheets like she was exhausted. I stayed awake, listening to her breathing even out, wondering how many lies she had to tell herself before falling asleep. The next morning, I checked the footage. Nothing from the night before, but I found what I needed from earlier that day. Around noon, someone entered the house using the spare key under the flower pot. He was tall, younger than me by at least 10 years, dark jeans, red windbreaker, gym bag slung over his shoulder like he owned the place. I watched him walk straight toward the bedroom, out of frame, and then, 48 minutes later, walk back out with his jacket off and hair wet like he'd showered. He paused at the kitchen counter, grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, took a bite, and left. I stared at the screen for a long time after that. She had let him shower. She had given him food. That wasn't some random fling, that was comfort, routine, something close to domestic. It wasn't even the cheating that hit me the hardest. It was realizing that someone else had been treated like the man of the house while I sat in it and waited like a fool. That night, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed her to walk herself into the mess she'd made with her own mouth. So when she mentioned she might work late again next Thursday, I smiled and said, "No problem." I even offered to order her favorite takeout for when she got home, like everything was normal. And she smiled back, thinking she was still in control. Thinking I was still the idiot sitting on the couch waiting for her lies. I wasn't. Not anymore. She came home Thursday night looking tired on purpose. The fake yawn when she took off her shoes, the overly dramatic shoulder roll like she'd been sitting at a desk all day, it was all part of the same bad play she'd been performing for weeks. I handed her the takeout bag and told her it was still hot. She smiled with that same tired expression and thanked me, then disappeared into the kitchen. I waited until she was distracted by unpacking the food before I asked her something I knew she wouldn't be ready for. "Did you lock the back door when you left this morning?" She paused, chopsticks hovering over the rice box. "I think so." "Why?" I looked up from my phone and shrugged. "Heard a noise earlier. Thought maybe something got in. Maybe just the wind." She nodded, eyes down. "I'm sure I locked it." Her voice was flat. I waited another beat. "Maybe it was that guy from your gym. What's his name again?" That got her attention. She blinked, froze just for a second. "Who?" I played it cool. "Ben, I think. Thought I saw him driving by last weekend." Didn't you say you bumped into him a few times? She shook her head a little too quickly. I barely know him. Why are you bringing him up? That was all I needed. She was rattled. I didn't press. Just smiled and said, no reason, then asked about her day like nothing had happened. The rest of dinner passed in silence except for the occasional clink of her chopsticks against the plastic container. She didn't finish her food. Said she wasn't hungry anymore. I cleaned up without saying anything else, waited until she went to the shower, then retrieved the phone from the sock drawer. The camera had captured everything. He came in again that afternoon at 2:43. Same windbreaker. Same casual walk down the hallway. This time he stayed longer, almost 2 hours. The moment I saw her lead him out, yes, she was there too, standing by the door holding it open for him. Her hair still damp from the shower they'd probably shared. I made up my mind. The next morning, I told her I'd be out most of the day helping a friend move. It was a lie, of course. I didn't even bother driving far. I went to a cafe near the edge of town, one we used to like before she started finding reasons to avoid it, and sat there with a coffee I didn't drink. I opened my laptop, created a new email account, and uploaded everything. Every clip, every timestamp, every clear shot of her and him. I wasn't going to send it to anyone. Not yet. But I needed it ready. I needed her to understand just how deep this had gone, how much I had let her walk all over me, and how far I was willing to go to show her I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I came home around sunset. She was already on the couch, legs curled up, watching a show she didn't even like. I sat next to her without speaking. She muted the TV and looked at me. You okay? I nodded. Just tired. She hesitated. You've been quiet lately. Everything okay at work? I turned to her, finally letting her see something real in my face. It's not work. She sat up straighter. Then what is it? I looked her in the eyes for the first time in days. I know, Laura. Her mouth opened, then closed. Know what? She asked, but her voice broke halfway through. I didn't answer right away. I stood up, went to the bedroom, came back with the phone, and dropped it on the coffee table. Play the second video from the top. Go ahead. She didn't move. I stood there and waited until she finally reached out, her hand shaking just a little. She pressed play. The screen lit up with the image of her front door opening. He walked in. She walked behind him. Nothing else needed to be said. When the video ended, she didn't look at me. How long have you known? She asked. I didn't answer. Please, she added, like that word still meant something. A few weeks, I said. You made it easy. She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. It didn't mean anything, she whispered. I laughed. Just once? You let him shower here. You let him eat from our kitchen. You used our bed. She finally looked up. Her face was pale, like the blood had drained from it. I didn't plan for this to happen. But you kept doing it, I said. That's what matters. She tried to talk again, but I held up a hand. Don't. I'm not interested in your version. I gave you space. I gave you trust. I asked you nothing even when I knew everything. You had every chance to come clean. She wiped at her eyes, probably hoping I'd feel something watching her fall apart. I didn't. Not anymore. So what now? She asked. I picked up the phone, closed the video, and walked to the door. Now? Now we see what happens when you treat someone like they don't matter. I left without slamming the door. I wanted her to sit there in silence with the sound of the latch clicking back into place. She didn't call that night, not once. That surprised me more than anything else. I expected the panic, the desperate voicemails, the teary text begging for a conversation, some attempt to fix what she broke. Instead, silence. It was like she wanted to wait and see how far I'd go before making her move. So I gave her more to think about. I stayed with my cousin Danny, a guy who didn't ask questions unless you asked first. When I walked in with a duffel bag and a stiff look on my face, all he said was, couch is clean, fridge is half full, remote's on the armrest. I nodded, dropped my stuff, and sat down. We didn't say anything for an hour. That was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I got up early and drove to my office, even though it was a Saturday. I spent 3 hours drafting an email. It was polite, professional, and clear. I attached the video files. I addressed it to Laura's boss, not because I wanted to get her fired, but because I knew exactly how many HR policies she'd broken by bringing that guy, also a client of the gym they partner with, into our home during working hours when she claimed to be on calls or out at meetings. I didn't send it. I just saved it. Then I printed the email and sealed it in an envelope with her name on it. The kind of envelope that sits heavy in your hand, even though the paper inside doesn't weigh anything. Then I drove home. She was there. I expected her to be. Her car was parked in the same spot, like nothing had changed. When I walked in, she was at the kitchen table, still in pajamas, face blank. She looked like someone who hadn't slept but didn't want to admit it. I didn't sit. I placed the envelope on the table in front of her. She stared at it but didn't touch it. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low. "That's the first step," I said. "It's not the last, unless you make it the last." She opened it slowly, read it without reaction, then folded it back and set it down. "You're trying to destroy me," she said. I shook my head. "No, you already did that yourself. I'm just letting you feel it for a change." She leaned back, eyes fixed on the wall behind me. "Are you sending it?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "But I will if I don't get exactly what I want." She nodded, didn't argue, didn't plead. "And what do you want?" I leaned on the table, close enough to make sure she heard every word. "You're going to pack your things and leave this house. You're not going to fight me on anything. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. You don't get to lie in the bed you ruined. You don't get to touch the walls you disrespected. And you sure as hell don't get to keep pretending you're some victim in all this." Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. "What about the house?" she asked. "I want it," I said. "And I'll get it. If you try to argue, that email goes out. I've got everything documented, every video, every detail, every day you lied to my face. You won't win in court. You'll lose your job, your reputation, and probably your ability to work in your field. I'm not bluffing. You know that." She looked down, breathing shallow. "You really hate me that much?" I stood upright again. "No. If I hated you, I'd already have sent it. This isn't about hate. It's about making sure you know what consequences feel like." She didn't speak again. I left the house without looking back. The next day, she texted me a photo of her suitcase. One line, "I'm leaving tomorrow." I didn't respond. The locks were changed by the following weekend. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was slow, methodical, and suffocating. I withdrew our joint savings into my own account legally before filing. I contacted her parents and let them know she'd be staying with them, because I wouldn't be responsible for her next move. I told mutual friends the truth, directly, calmly, and without adding anything unnecessary. I didn't make a show of it. I made it a fact. I scheduled a call with her company's HR, gave them a brief overview without sending the footage, and made it clear I would pursue full asset control unless she signed the divorce agreement as it stood. Within 4 days, the papers were returned with her signature. She didn't fight. She couldn't. Every step she took was one I'd already anticipated. Every argument she wanted to make died on her lips the moment I reminded her I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. The kind of knowing that makes people freeze inside their own skin. She had lied, over and over, and I had let her because I needed her to believe she still held the cards. But she never did. I just waited until I was ready to flip the table. When she came back for her last box of things, I didn't say anything. I watched from the window, arms folded. She didn't knock, didn't wave, didn't try to talk. She loaded her car like she was moving furniture for someone else. She left the keys in the mailbox and drove off without looking back. I never deleted the videos. I kept them as a reminder that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is just the sound of someone sharpening the knife before they use it. She reached out 2 weeks later through a typed message that looked more like a job resignation letter than something written by a wife who destroyed a decade of marriage. There was no apology in it, no mention of love, regret, or anything that would suggest she had been thinking about me as a person. It was all logistics. What to do about the furniture she left behind, which mailing address to use for her remaining documents, whether I needed anything else signed. I stared at that message for 10 minutes before replying with one sentence. "We talk once, in person, then never again." She agreed. We met at a neutral place, a quiet diner halfway between my house and her temporary apartment. I got there early, sat at the booth farthest from the windows, and waited. She arrived on time, carrying that same beige purse she used during her weekday lies, dressed like she had somewhere better to be afterward. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer a smile or a handshake. She sat down slowly and looked across the table at me like she was studying a problem she couldn't quite solve. We didn't speak for a moment. The silence wasn't tense, it was exhausted. She was the first to break it. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded once. "I wanted to talk," she said, "not about the legal stuff. Just about us." I waited. She folded her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know that's not going to happen, and I'm not asking for it. But I need you to hear a few things." I leaned back. "Go ahead." She took a deep breath. I don't know when it started, not the cheating, but the drifting. I told myself we were fine for so long that I stopped noticing when we weren't. I wasn't trying to hurt you at first. It wasn't about being unhappy with you. It was about being numb. I raised an eyebrow. And he fixed that? She shook her head quickly. No, he didn't fix anything. He was just there. He didn't know me. That made it easy. I could be whoever I wanted to be when I was with him. No history. No expectations. I stared at her as she talked, watching the way she kept adjusting her sleeve, like she couldn't get comfortable in her own skin. You know what the worst part was? I asked. She looked at me, eyes wide, waiting. It wasn't the cheating. It wasn't even the lies. It was the way you treated it like it wasn't a big deal. Like you could go back to normal after everything. You didn't even try to explain anything until I made you. Her face dropped. I was scared, she said. Not of you, but of what I'd done. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I nodded. Because you stopped seeing me as your husband. You started seeing me as the person you were fooling. She didn't deny it. I want to be honest now, she said. I wanted the marriage to work. I did. But at some point I started confusing routine with unhappiness. And I didn't have the courage to say it out loud. So I did the cowardly thing. I looked at her carefully. You had every chance to say something. Every time we sat across the table, every time I asked how your day was, every time I believed you when you told me you were just tired from work. You chose silence. You chose lies. And now you want to explain it away like it was inevitable. Her eyes watered. It's not like I planned it. I cut her off. That's not better. That's worse. You didn't even think about it. You just did it. Like nothing mattered. The waitress came by. We both declined to order. After she left, Laura asked, So what now? Are you really done with everything? No chance of staying in touch. I laughed under my breath. You want to stay in touch? After everything? What would that even look like? She lowered her eyes. I don't know. I guess I thought maybe, eventually. I leaned forward. There's no eventually. I've already moved past the part where I beg for answers. I've already processed the fact that the person I married doesn't exist anymore. You're not her. Not even close. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is the form from my attorney. It finalizes the asset split you wanted. I signed it. I took it, checked the signature, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Good, I said. It's done then. She nodded. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I stood up slowly. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just done. Don't mistake the quiet for weakness. I stayed quiet so I could leave with my dignity. That's all I have left. She sat there, staring at the empty seat across from her, and I walked out of the diner without looking back. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel empty. I felt like someone who finally stepped out of a room that had been locked from the inside for far too long. And I wasn't going back in. A month passed without a single message or call. That's how I knew she finally understood. There was no bargaining, no attempt at rebuilding anything, not even under the excuse of checking in. She had backed off completely, probably because she knew that nothing she said could repair the damage she left behind. I didn't celebrate. There was no need. I just lived. Slowly, the silence around the house stopped feeling heavy. I'd wake up, make breakfast without looking over my shoulder, clean the kitchen, and know it would stay that way when I came back from work. I rearranged the furniture one weekend, not because I needed a change, but because I wanted to erase the layout of that routine she turned into her hiding place. I didn't throw away everything, though. Some things stayed. Not out of sentiment, but because they didn't lie to me. A chair's just a chair. It doesn't pretend to be faithful while planning something else. People kept asking how I was. I gave them the same answer every time. Better now. It wasn't meant to sound profound, and I didn't say it with bitterness. It was just the truth. I stopped explaining the details. Everyone had their own version of what happened anyway. Some assumed she cheated and I lost it. Others figured it was just another modern breakup. I didn't bother correcting anyone. That chapter was over, and the facts belonged to me alone. There was something nice about that, keeping the truth private. Not as a secret, but as something earned. I spent a few weekends with my cousin and some old friends. No big nights out, just cards, beers, talking about nothing in particular. That helped more than I expected. One night, Danny asked me, So, you gonna date again, or what? I didn't answer right away. Not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I didn't feel any rush. I finally told him, I'll know when I'm not thinking about her at all. Not even in the background. He nodded. Makes sense. He didn't ask again. The thing that hit me hardest didn't come from a conversation or memory. It came from cleaning out a drawer in the hallway. I found an old sticky note, one of those dumb little ones she used to leave on the fridge in the early years. It said, "Buy eggs and maybe think about us this weekend." I stood there holding it for a while, then dropped it in the trash without a second thought. That note had been a joke once, a way to suggest we needed a date night or a talk about the future. Now it was just paper. All the meanings were dead. I finished the divorce paperwork officially at the county office. The woman behind the counter processed it with all the emotion of someone checking out groceries. "Finalized," she said, stamping the documents. "Anything else?" I shook my head. "No, that's it." Walking out of that office, I didn't feel free. I felt accurate, like the world had finally updated to reflect reality. A few days later, I received one last letter from her, handwritten, mailed to my house. It wasn't long. She didn't ask for anything. She wrote, "You were always better than me at staying grounded. I guess I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I don't blame you for walking away. I know I burned it down. I hope you get a better ending with someone else." I read it once and didn't respond. I kept it for exactly 1 week before shredding it and tossing it in the bin on a Tuesday morning before work. That felt final in a way no signature ever could. The hardest thing wasn't letting her go. It was accepting how long I held on to the version of her that never existed. I thought we were building something, that we had years ahead of us filled with mutual understanding and quiet loyalty. Turns out I was building alone. She was playing house with a stranger while I was trying to protect a life I didn't even know was hollow. That realization didn't make me angry anymore. It just helped me let go. I started sleeping better. My appetite came back. I stopped checking the security feed. I even deleted the files from the phone. Not to forgive her, but because I didn't need them anymore. They'd done their job. Revenge wasn't about exposure or punishment. It was about control, taking it back when someone thought they could steal it from you without consequences. I took mine back, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to fix because I had already replaced what was broken with something that worked, my own clarity. One Sunday evening, I sat out on the back porch with a cup of coffee and just listened to the quiet. No plans. No questions. No second-guessing. The phone buzzed with a notification from a dating app I'd signed up for weeks ago but hadn't opened yet. I didn't check it right away. I just let it sit there, like a book I could start whenever I wanted, no pressure. When I finally opened it, I wasn't looking for anything serious. Just a chance to talk to someone who hadn't lied to me yet. That was enough.